Hi, I'm going to run through Language Paper 2 question 2, which should be an easier question than people make it out to be. It's worth 8 marks and it should take you roughly 10 minutes. Now, that 10 minutes is really inclusive of planning time, so you just need to be aware that you don't want to be planning for this for 10-15 minutes, because it's not worth enough marks to justify that. So hopefully today I will show you almost a simpler way of planning that involves writing very little down on your exam paper and writing plenty in your answer to make up for it. So the question will look something like this. Question 2, look at both sources. The schools being described are very different. Write a summary of the differences between the schools and students with them. Now, just to make you aware, this question could say similarities, and they're very similar. You need to make sure you read the question really, really carefully, because they will not identify that for you. They won't remind you, they won't put down here, remember I've said similarities. So you need to make sure you read the question. It's either going to be differences or similarities, and in fact I would underline it, differences between the schools. So even if it just says write a summary, you need to make sure that you read the question to look for either differences or similarities. Okay. Now, I'm not going to read through the whole text. I'm just going to leave it on the screen so you can see what I'm going to look at. Now, I'm always going to look at source A first to identify the main features that I'm going to look for differences in the other one. Okay, so remember that the question is about school. So this bit about the care colour and bag full of books isn't relevant. This bit is. Yellow and blue classrooms were always full and sticky. So that's one point. Class always laughing. That might be another point. Notes would be passed in our lessons. I mean, that's kind of about behaviour, so that might be relevant. And I'm going to put that in there just to remind myself that I'm talking about behaviour. There were no phones, not relevant. These would make them not relevant. Teacher snatching it might be relevant, but it's probably not. Chairs always squeaked. That's about the school. Tables would be covered in scrawlings and swear words and chewing gum. So these are the main things that I think are going to be relevant to the question. Now, I think all of these come really under the same brackets. What I'm going to do now very briefly is I'm going to label what I can infer about them. So yellow and blue classrooms were always full and sticky. That means it's quite full. Class is always laughing. Actually, they're both, I'm going to get rid of number 3 there because they're both about behaviour. It's not very good. Chairs always squeaked. Scrawling swear words and chewing gum shows that it's a little bit run down. Okay, as you can see, very, very brief. Now, we're going to read through source B with that in mind. So, it's short, obviously, and I do understand that you've got to read through 2 full texts, but if you work backwards, so if you work from question 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, you have already read these texts, and you're really only looking for 2 to 3 points to compare. So don't get carried away trying to find loads of different points. 2 or 3 is absolutely sufficient as long as they link. So now we're looking to see whether the other school is full. So point 1 was the school seems to be full and sticky. Now let's look for any difference in this text. Organised, wide corridors. So actually the group seems to, it actually explicitly says it. The group seems to be quite small here, focused individual. So that's going to be my first difference. Not full, spacious. That's my first difference. Secondly, I'm looking for, is the behaviour bad? Politeness. Already we've got that. Bright-eyed and enthusiastic. So we've got good behaviour. So that's different. So that's a tick and that's a tick, because those are 2 things that I can compare and tick and tick. Lastly, is it run down? We've got bright displays and airy classrooms. That might suggest that it's not. So not run down. Okay, so that's it. That's all your planning. You shouldn't have to write too much. You're just writing a bare inference down. Okay, and now to write it up, we use the structure PC. Point, evidence, explain, compare, evidence, explain. Now what you'll find is that these aren't all separate sentences. These two will usually come in a sentence, and these will usually come in a sentence. You don't really want to make it too blocky because it's time consuming. Okay, then you've got your point is your starting point. So in source A, make sure you're referencing the question. So the school seems to be, what's my point one? My point one was that it's full. Seems to be quite full of students. Now here straight away I've just used a quote because I don't need to then go, this is evidenced by the fact that it's always full and sticky. I could just put, seems to be quite full of students. Now for my explain. This implies, and here I can't say that it's full because I've already said that it's full. So I want to see whether or not I can think of another inference. So when you think about your inference, it's usually what else do we learn? So this implies that, well, if it's full of students, that probably implies that it's in quite a busy area. It could be a school in a busy area, or with less funding, and so busier classes. Okay. And now our comparison. So all you need is a comparative word. Now obviously for differences, you are talking however, although, those kinds of words. For similarities, you're talking similarly and likewise. Okay, so just, you don't need both for this question. But there you are. Okay, so however, in source B, the school is much more so the group seem quite small here, focus on individual, much more productive because the groups are small. What else did you say? Small, focus on individual. Are small and individual. This implies, and again, what else do we learn from this? If the groups are small and individual, and again, we could make contrast the other bit. So this implies that the school in source B may either have more funding or it may be a specialist school. Suggested by the individual learning. And that's it. So here we've got your point, your evidence, your inference, your compare, your evidence, and your inference. And that is that times 3 is roughly all you want for this question. Now, obviously, my next point would be the fact that the behaviour is bad compared to the good behaviour, and then the fact that it's run down compared to the bright classrooms. So it shouldn't really be more complicated than that. I've definitely got my point, evidence, inference, and I'm quite clear about it as well. So I should be able to get at least 6 marks from 3 of those. To get 8 marks, you need to be perceptive, which means you need to be, this bit needs to be much better. So you need to be inferring things that aren't obvious to everyone. It doesn't mean go too far outside the box. That might just mean that you're thinking about, why is it like this? And that's what I've said about funding, although you might have to be a little bit more clever than that. Okay, so it's, why is it like this? What else do we learn? And that should be getting you at least 5 or 6 marks out of 8.